I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sky Blue Credit Repair. Sky Blue's the oldest credit repair company in the country. They have 4.5-star reviews, and my favorite part about the company is that these are just genuinely good people who want to help you repair your credit, have a better financial life and future. Everybody at Sky Blue that you talk to is absolutely interested in helping you repair your credit, see your score go up, and have you enjoy financial freedom and be able to live the life that you really deserve. I know about all of the other credit repair companies. Sky Blue Credit Repair, in my opinion, is the #1 credit repair company in the country. There are not better people in that industry than the people over at Sky Blue Credit. Links in the bio. Tell them the GOAT sent you.
All right, and we are back here at the Everyone Hates Car Salesman podcast with me, Goat for 216, Sean Payne, and my good friend, Chris Haus from Haus Auto Group in Canfield, Ohio. So right back into it, Chris. So do you have a favorite story that illustrates a key lesson that you've learned? I think a lot of business owners out there, especially a lot of startups, would like to hear from a successful, experienced business owner, about a successful story or an anecdote that illustrates a key lesson that you've learned. I mean, is there anything you can give some knowledge, get some free game?
All right. So do you have 7 hours?
No.
Because the other reason why is we talked earlier, and this is kind of I don't know that I have one specific, but I will tell you, this is the difference in being a good business owner in any business and a not so good business owner. You have to be open-minded and you have to listen to people because you're constantly changing the way you run your business based on life's changes, right? So I don't know if there's one specifically. I mean, yeah, there's things that, maybe we delivered a car a certain way and it didn't go well, so we changed the way we do it. You're constantly, there's no set it and forget it in small business. You literally are changing, the way your processes and your procedures based on, technology, the way the customer wants to shop, anything, really. I mean, so I don't know if there's one specific, there's not one specific thing. I can't think there's one because I think, we do something here and I might get on with my marketing guy, Sean, and be like, hey, Sean, moving forward, we got to do this. Let's try this.
Yeah.
We'll see if it works because this isn't working. So let's try this. Or let's do this, let's try that, So there's not one specific. I'm kind of always kind of watching everything and just, and picking at things that aren't working, and we always change things up. So there's not one specific that I could think of that made a huge difference. I mean,
that's an answer, though, really. That's an answer in an answer, though, Chris. If you think about it, what I tell guys, guys ask me all the time, opinion on what they're doing at their store or whatever. And my answer is always this: stay fluid. Always have the ability to pivot. What happens a lot of times, and I think you can speak to this, is a lot of times we get so caught up in it's got to be done this way, and this is what, this and that and the other. And you can become very, like you said, very narrow. And I think the most successful business people in the world, certainly in the car business, because it's such a volatile stuff is happening all the time business, keep the ability to pivot in a second. You know what I mean? Be able to make this move and go, no, boom, hang a right, let's go this way. So I think your answer is that you're always learning, and making a lesson, right?
Yeah, you keep changing your business so that you have traction, right? And then you change it again when you don't have traction. But you can't wait till you don't have any traction. You've got to know that, okay, it's time to change, especially, like I said, with technology over the last, since 2000 to 2020, good Lord, has the car business changed. I think I've been in, where we've been in the part of the car business that changed more than ever. Prior to, from 1900s to 1990, shit was the same. I mean, there was some things that changed, but there was no internet. There was no, there was.
Yeah.
But with technology and everything and being able to be in this business now, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. And I always say, if you're going to start up in this business, keep it simple at first.
Yeah.
Because I find myself, trying to stay as complex as possible, but then saying to myself, I really, at the backside of my life, I really want to get simple.
Yeah, for sure. I love simple.
You know, and yeah, I
Yeah.
love simple. Simple's really nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
simple's nice.
yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, I think you always got to be open minded. You always got to, like you said, just because you do something now doesn't mean it's good 10 years from now. I
Yeah,
mean, shit, the shelf life on a change in the car business could be 2 or 3 years till technology changes if you're lucky. And
yeah.
especially like we talked earlier a little bit about AI. I mean, where's that going? What's that going to look like in 5 years? I mean, look what it's already looked like in a year or two.
Yeah.
So what's it going to look in 5 and 10 years from now? You know what I mean? And
So here's a touchy subject. If you're a car guy watching, does AI ever replace car salespeople?
maybe eventually, yeah. And I don't think it's because, and the only reason why it would is not because obviously AI is, you know, right now AI will never beat the best car salesman. You know what I mean? I mean, no way, no how. There's still a lot, and honestly, it's not going to be up to us. It's going to be up to the consumer. So, like, it all depends on how much. There's still a lot of consumers that want to touch the tires, talk to the owner, look at the Google reviews, see the brick and mortar, drive out with the family and talk to a staff. But as my son's generation becomes car drivers and 25 years old, they're staring at their phones constantly. So, like, for us, it feels like it's not normal, right? But in 10 years, 15 years, that's going to be normal.
So
You know?
today people are creating their personas in ChatGPT, and I don't know if you've done that yet, but it's hilarious to do. So you
Yeah.
can create your own persona in ChatGPT, and it's basically an extension of the human you. It can be, or I mean, we know it's always going to get better. But so I wonder. I was having a conversation with a very successful car dealer the other day. I said, "Is there a world where my persona, I'm a consumer, where my persona contacts your persona and the car deal happens between our two virtual selves? Is that a
That's
thing?"
I don't know. I mean, listen, from what I've seen, I think anything could be possible. I really think, like, I'll never want that. You know what I mean? I would never want that. I don't even know if that my kid would ever want that, but I don't know. It's so hard. I think there's going to be a lot of things that stick. I would hope just that the car business in itself not stays like it is, but the handshake was always the way to do a deal. You know what I mean? Like, but I think unfortunately with the younger generation, like I said, I don't know that we're going to have a choice. You know what I mean? I do think though that even when we're in the heart of the AI, I think you're still going to need good general managers and people making sure that everything's kind of everything's getting greased and working the way it should. I still think you're going to need some type of. I don't know if it'll completely. I mean, it could completely replace the salesman, but I don't know. I mean, it's all hypothetical at this point, and it's really what the consumer wants. Um,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of AI now. There's still a lot of loopholes and a lot of issues with
Yeah.
it.
So do you, who buys all the cars at Haus Auto Group?
So we are a KBB buying center.
Yeah.
We buy a majority of our stuff off the street.
I love that. Talk a little bit about private owner acquisition in today's market and our industry compared to buying a car at the auction.
Well, so the crazy thing, I was talking to LJ on the phone uh, back in 2000, early 2021. It would have been right before COVID. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to try this buying center thing, but it's a $20,000 commitment. It's 4 months. And I said, should I give it a try? He goes, it's 5,000 a month. You got to buy some cars. What's the worst that could happen? And all of a sudden, we were doing okay with it. December for KBB is usually a little bit slow because of the holidays. So I'm like, man, we didn't really buy any. I'm 2 months into it. I'm like, man, this sucks.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden COVID hit, and then everybody was trying to sell their cars. And honestly, the car business changed for the consumer now, because now with Carvana and all those, and CarMax and CarMax's been around, but everybody's shopping their trade prior to trading it into a new car store now because there was so much equity.
Yeah. But so today, would you say, I think you You mentioned earlier you might have 90 cars in inventory right now, which is a good amount of cars, especially for an independent. And would you say are half of those cars private owner acquisitions or more? Oh, okay, so
More.
you're really bought into the private. Which
Yeah.
is
So let me give you my spiel here.
go ahead.
So we jumped into it during COVID, and it started working out really well. And obviously, and through COVID, we were doing the KBB, and I went to my marketing guy and I said, this is kind of working. I said, but we're already the car guys in our town. Any oddball stuff, we even get dealer referrals. Go see Haus. We don't really buy that.
Yeah,
And realistically, like I said to Sean, I said, hey, listen, how much are we spending on Google and Facebook? I think we were at the time we're spending like 6,000-7,000 a month for AdWords and Facebook and a little bit of this and that. And I said, why are we advertising that we sell cars? I mean, everybody. I would hope that's what they know we do, right?
right.
I said, and just like we were talking about inventory acquisition, the dealership, we make our money when we buy the car, not when we sell it.
100%.
And they've always said that. You buy a car, pay too much for it, you're not going to make any money.
Right. Right.
So let me get the inventory and we'll sell it. I said, so let's take our marketing, and I want to take 4,000 of the 7,000. I want to spend it on we buy cars.
Correct.
So that's kind of been since 21, that's been our marketing. Our billboards say we buy cars. Our Facebook says we buy cars. We run some service ads and stuff like that. But we buy cars, we buy cars, we buy cars.
Yeah.
We pay more than anybody, we buy cars. And that's kind of been our marketing. And I think organically, listen, we talked earlier about, you spend X amount of dollars a month with these lead providers, and do you really need them anymore? KBB is not cheap. And in my market, I think we do pretty well with it. And I've often thought, could I cancel KBB and still get the buys that I'm getting?
And what's your answer?
We're gonna buy 50 cars this month off the street.
Yeah.
And for us, after COVID, brick and mortar auctions, obviously inventory's down. They're running less cars. So how do they pay their overhead? They have to raise fees, right? So auction fees that used to be $300 are now $600-700.
Yeah.
New car stores are keeping inventory.
Yeah.
So they're only sending stuff to the auction that needs extra recon.
Yeah.
So you go to the auction, you buy a car that needs, look at a car that's say 10 grand, right? So customer comes in the lot, they want 10,000 for their car. And we're like, it needs brakes, it needs tires. We'll give you 9. They're like, okay, 9's great. So now I got 10 grand in that car, 10.5 in that car done. I can sell it for 12.9 or 12 grand or whatever. You go to the auction, and because of the scare of inventory, now you're buying a car that is worth 9, you're paying 11.
All day long.
Or 10.5.
Right.
And you're paying a $600 auction fee. Now you got 11.1 back at the dealership. You get it back to the dealership. It doesn't need $1,500 worth of work. It needs $2,500 worth of work. So now you got 12.5, 13 grand in a car that you could sell for 13.9. Now you're trying to get 13.9 out of the car. Our margins were way better on the KBB, but you've got to make a full blown commitment. You know what I mean? With it.
It's a mindset for sure. A lot of guys they're still stuck in there. They jump online and their favorite auction or whatever, and they sit there and they push the button. And it's never made sense to me why you would want to be the last bidder at an auction, because it means you're the highest bidder, when I can sit across from Chris, a private owner, use what is supposed to be my specialty, which is negotiation and building rapport, to discuss why the car might not be worth what you want for it, and not pay a transport fee, not pay an auction fee, not pay whatever other wholesale, whatever fees you have. And I have a captive audience and a consumer, a seller. Oh, and by the way, I'm at my facility. So if I don't like the noise in the front end, hey, Joe, can you throw this on the lift real quick?
So we call it a KBB inspection. We do it on every vehicle. Every vehicle comes to the dealership. The technician gets an hour to go around it, drive it, make sure, and we rack every car as if it's got no miles on it, we don't. But I'll tell you what, it's we were a little short on inventory a few weeks ago, and I'm trying to buy stuff at the auction. I'm like, man, I just can't. So my manager's like, we need cars. So I said, you go on. Why don't you go on today and tomorrow and you buy me a few cars? And he got end of the 2 days. He's like, I can't buy any cars. I said, then do me a favor. Next time somebody rolls up here in a car and MMR is $12,000 and you want to give them $11,000, pay 13.
Correct. Right.
Like if the car doesn't need service and you don't need to pay auction fees, and sometimes I make my managers do that just to get them more aggressive, because you can miss buys them nickel diamond over $1,000, and I'm like, listen, if MMR is 12, pay 13. The car's ready to go. You're gonna spend $500 on it. You got to buy a car at 11 to have 13 in it at the auction. Just you can't, and that same car's doing 13 at the auction. You got to pay fees, and it needs extra service. If you have the opportunity to touch the vehicle, know exactly what it needs, not pay auction fees, you're better off to put your deal together right then and there. And then, we started, maybe at first I was paying a little bit too much for stuff, but we started getting there was a couple other, there was like with Cheddar, you remember Cheddar?
Yeah.
Cheddar was in town right up the street from us, and I'm like, screw it, I want to pay more than Cheddar, and there's sometimes we wouldn't, and there's sometimes we would. Carvana's algorithm's a little bit different, so there's some cars that they just pay. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I did a video about it the other day.
I don't know how they can promote that they were making $6,000 per car when I see them paying retail for cars. But that's a whole other top. That's a whole other top.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast on its own. But I think that you're right. I think what happens with guys who are in charge of acquisition at stores, you have the number that you have been trained that if you bought at the auction, you would pay this. And a lot of guys can't transition over to, I can't use what I would pay at the auction as the number I would pay to a private seller. It's a different buy altogether, because if nothing else, the fee structure, but the convenience of it is worth paying more too. So I think you're right. But a lot of guys, they get that number. That's how they were trained to come up with it. Then they take that number and go, now, if I sit across from a private seller, that's the number, but it's not the number. So,
and the crazy thing is, to go back to COVID, like I loved it. Like I didn't love COVID, but I love, you get what I'm saying. Like I loved the change in the car business. Like it was crazy, because like I grew up in the business when you used your gut.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Viato came about, and I use Viato daily, and then there was the data. So to be able to mix the gut and data made me a better buyer all day long.
Yep.
And during COVID, I was getting stores calling me saying, "Hey, do you want to buy this? We don't want to stock it," because there was just data. Some of the younger guys don't have the gut.
Yeah, right. I think the position, not to interrupt you, but I want to touch on that. We're the guys that were trained the old school way, and as you and I both know, some of that stuff still works today. But we were trained to work on our gut, but we still have enough brains left, right? Brain cells that I can also use the data and the analytics that are there today. So I think we're that last generation, Chris. We're the best of both worlds. But, there's going to be a time when it's just data, guys. We're done. We're gone, whatever. And so I think that it's actually.
Yeah, I had a guy call me. I remember this. I had a guy call me during COVID on a Tahoe. And he's like, "Man, this is, 50 some thousand. We don't want to stock it." And I'm looking at it and I'm like, "Send me some pictures." And I'm like, "Oh man, it's an LTZ. It's pearl white. It's got chrome wheels. It's got the saddle interior." I said, "I don't care what MMR is. So throw the book out the window." You know what I mean? This thing's an eyeball, and we bought it and we sold it in a couple of days. And it was one of those things where, like, sometimes the data is very important, don't get me wrong, but you've got to be able to.
I agree.
Work through both of it.
So do you have anything? So I'm going to build a situation. So 13-year-old Chris Haus, right? If you could meet 13-year-old Chris Haus today, what would you tell him? What would your message be to him? Like what advice would you give him? Something that you've learned along the way that you wish you would have known back then to help him on his journey?
Let's say the only thing that I wish I did better even 10 years ago than I do now is, I guess as you get older, you lose patience, right? So I had too many patience, and I think I let things play out that cost me money. And I wish I knew what it felt like at 20 years old as I feel now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We get older and we got less patience, and so I don't know if I'd want to tell myself anything, but I would want to know the feeling of what it's like to be like, hey, you're getting old, and it's time not to take no shit from anybody, and essentially don't put up with people that don't show up to work, and don't do this, and kind of like, and there's even things like for myself, the decisions I should have made faster that I did,
Yeah.
that I make faster now because you're like, tick, 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 so like,
It's good. Yeah.
I think just the feeling of not being, you know what I'm trying to say, like,
Yeah, yeah. So you would tell
yeah,
your younger self, don't learn lessons the hard way when your brain clearly shows you should make this decision. I think, and
yeah,
that,
exactly. On.
yeah, right, exactly. So, last question: if you could have dinner with three people, alive or unalive, dinner with three people, one dinner, three people, who would they be and why?
Individually or together?
Oh, all of you together. Well, however you want to have it. You can eat three times in one day. Let's say, whatever. I mean, who are the three people? You could sit at a table. Who would they be and why? It's a good one, isn't it? You like that?
Yeah, it's a hard question, actually. Honestly, at this point in my life, I want to have dinner just with my family.
Yeah, I love that answer. I love that answer.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, without my cell phone ringing.
I love that answer. Like, right,
Yeah,
right. Just private
yeah.
dinner with my family. I love
Maybe
that.
my wife, my son, and then some guy that will answer my phone for me. He could sit the room next. He could sit a couple tables over while I'll buy his meal. But
Right,
like, yeah, I think like that's, and listen, and I'm not saying that because I think I know everything. I just
right.
think like, outside of the dealership, you're always, car guys are always marketing ourselves, and that's how you're the best at what you can do. But then you get to a point where you don't, where you still want to market yourself, obviously, because you have this business, this thriving business, but you also don't want to blink and miss. My son's 12 before I know it. He'll be 15, he'll be 18.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
me and my wife will be 60. It's like,
Right,
good
right,
lord.
right,
You know what I
right.
mean? So I think like an uninterrupted dinner with my family would be great. And
I love
obviously, I'd love to sit with some of the best people in the business and talk about work and get some information. But I think I'm not too late in my life to learn. I'll never be too old to learn. So I'd always like to, sit with some of the best guys in the business or best business owners so I could always make myself better. But I think at this point in my life, I'd like to just have dinner with my family.
Love that answer. That might be the best answer that this podcast has ever had. I love that answer. And I think that says a lot about you and Chris. I will tell you that I'm a firm believer that the universe smiles on people who value family, and realizing the importance of that. So I think that's probably a big part of why you're successful.
You don't know how many times I've closed my eyes, put my head down, and say, "Hey, just do everything right. It's going to work out." And then so far it has. You know what I mean? Like I can't complain. I've always been the guy, and I'll have multiple people that'll tell you, irregardless of money, when it comes to customers and taking care of them, if it costs me more money than I made on the vehicle, but that's irrelevant. And I do believe that what goes around comes around. So you just gotta, you can't. My dad always told me there's no right way to do the wrong thing,
Yeah.
like
There's
ever.
no wrong way to do the right thing.
Yes. Did I say that right?
I think you said it just fine. I knew what you meant. I knew
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
meant. So shout out your business. I want to know if somebody sees this and wants to buy a car from Chris Haus, wants to just talk business about Chris. I mean, how do we get a hold of you, buddy?
.com is the website, Haus autogroup.com. Our number directly is 330-702-0000. And and my cell phone number, I don't care. Call me on my cell phone, 330-501-0593.
All right, you might regret that, but I'm gonna leave it on here. So
I don't care, it's always on.
no, that's good, man. Well, as always,
It's always the right way. There's no right way to do the wrong thing.
there is no right way to do the wrong thing, and then I think I've heard there's no wrong way to do the right thing. Like as long as you do the right thing, it doesn't matter how you get there. I think they both work. I think they both work.
Yeah. You have me thinking for myself for a minute. Yeah. No, but yeah, and at the end of the day, like that's kind of how I've always been taught to do the business. To be any business. I mean, that goes the same for any business.
Yeah.
And my dad always says, "And weight broke the wagon."
Yeah.
I wish I would.
I hope I get to meet Dad one day. I have to come out to the store. You're not that far from me. I have to come out there.
Come up, we'll go to lunch or something. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. Well, I will. I'll tell you this. Every time we talk, it's always fun. It's always intellectually stimulating. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we started this at like 11:30.
Yeah, we're gonna have. This might be 2 episodes. We might get dual. Views out of this. But thanks for coming on, brother. And
You have me. I love talking about this stuff. It's great.
And we can do. We may do this again. You've been a great guest. I love your answers and your insight to the business. So again, thank you, Chris Haus, Haus Automotive Group, Canfield, Ohio. You have his cell phone number now, so there's no excuse not to buy a car from him.
No, you can text me stuff too. I don't care. I don't care. Any way I can help, or if I can sell somebody a car, or just like you, if anybody in the business has any questions, I love that stuff. I've been doing it for years. I would love, any way I can help anybody in the business. I'm not I'm a firm believer in pushing people up around you and helping out when you can.
Pro tip, do not text or call him while he's at dinner with his family.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.
Take it easy.
See you.
I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sky Blue Credit Repair. Sky Blue is the oldest credit repair company in the country. They have 4.5-star reviews, and my favorite part about the company is that these are just genuinely good people who want to help you repair your credit, have a better financial life in future. Everybody at Sky Blue that you talk to is absolutely interested in helping you repair your credit, see your score go up, and have you enjoy financial freedom and be able to live the life that you really deserve. I know about all of the other credit repair companies. Sky Blue Credit Repair, in my opinion, is the #1 credit repair company in the country. There are not better people in that industry than the people over at Sky Blue Credit. Links in the bio. Tell them the GOAT sent you.